As we wrap up the lectionary year, which begins anew with Advent next week, the lectionary takes us to our customary last reading, the trial of Jesus before Pilate, who was the Roman governor of Judea. And under Roman imperial rule, Pilate was in charge of the Roman administration and military. Early in the morning, Jesus was taken from the high priest Caiaphas' house to the governor's palace. The Jewish authorities taking him did not go into the governor's palace, for they wanted to keep themselves ritually clean in order to be able to eat the Passover meal. So Pilate went outside and asked them, "What do you accuse this man of?" And their answer was, "We would not have brought him to you if he had not committed a crime." And Pilate said to them, "Then you yourselves take him and try him according to your own law." But they replied, "We are not allowed to put anyone to death." This happened in order to make come true what Jesus had said when he indicated the kind of death that he was going to die. So Pilate went back into the palace and called Jesus. "Are you the king of the Jews?" he asked him. And Jesus answered, "Does this question come from you, or does it come from others who told you about me?" And Pilate replied, "Do you think that I am a Jew? It was your own people and the chief priests who handed you over to me. What is it that you have done?" Jesus said, "My kingdom does not belong to this world. If my kingdom belonged to this world, my followers would fight to keep me from being handed over to the Jewish authorities. No, my kingdom does not belong here." And Pilate asked him, "Are you a king then?" Jesus answered, "You say that I am a king. I was born and came into the world for this one purpose, to speak about the truth. Whoever belongs to the truth listens to me." And so now I invite is shining directly in my eyes from over there. The Jewish authorities are clearly uncomfortable with the charge against Jesus in the beginning of the story. They refuse to even answer Pilate's question. Instead of saying what the charge is when he asks, they say, "We would not have brought him to you if there was not a charge." But from Pilate's interaction with him, it's clear that the charge against him is that he claimed to be the king of the Jews. I wonder what this claim would mean for Jesus, for the Jewish authorities, and for Pilate.
Well, Pilate wasn't king, but he was the king in that location. He was in charge, he was the head guy. So the feeling there's someone else there who's a king is going to somehow in conflict with his authority.
Sure. So Pilate is supposed to be the man in charge
Correct.
of this region as governor on behalf of Rome. And so for Pilate, that would mean a power struggle.
Correct.
I keep thinking about how there's no one there who is answering questions directly. People are asking a question, and then the person answers, whether it's the Jewish authorities or whether it's Jesus. It's all very indirect or tangential answers to the questions, and it must have just been extremely frustrating.
You're saying both the Jewish authorities and Jesus
Yeah.
did not respond directly to Pilate. And so it would have been frustrating to Pilate.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Just trying to get a straight answer, and nobody has given him the facts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With your question about what does it mean to be the king from the perspective of Pilate, Jesus in the middle of
The Jewish authorities.
Jewish authorities. Okay. Yeah, for the Jewish authorities sing. Jesus is king, and the Jewish authority are the masters, not Jesus. So again, it's a power struggle.
Right, okay, so they have, under Roman imperial rule, they have their own carved out power structure that they want to keep. And that if Jesus is king of a sovereign nation, that includes that they wouldn't have that power structure.
Well, and I think he's spent a lot of time criticizing their teachings. So even if he was popular with the people, I could see why the religious leaders would say, "We don't want this guy. He's undermining everything that
Sure.
the tradition we've built."
Yeah, so it's not only who's in charge, but also I disagree with your policy, right?
Right.
You know, we have different teachings about what we as a people should be doing.
Right.
It's interesting to ask who's the king and who's in charge, because I think the stories I grew up with the Jesus' time of the gospel, like it's to this day, like as a person who's started studying some modern political sciences, like how like people are ruled and how they're organized. It's not even as simple as our society, where we have like a mayor, governor, we have the government of the state, the president, and our federal system, the laws of the United States. Rome is an occupying power, taking over this region. They have their own leadership structure. They have their own community within the Jewish community there that is occupied by the Roman Empire. It's not even so simple. Like, what does that mean to live? Like, the people live day to day. They're fishermen and they do their jobs. And I don't know. It's easy to think about as an American. Like, well, you think Jesus is going to liberate you so that you're no longer under imperial rule. And I don't know if even the simple, common, Jewish person living there would comprehend what that means to overthrow the Roman Empire. They think that they're occupied by the Roman Empire. And what kind of king is he? Like, I'm wondering if it's just, the leader of the synagogue, the leader of this section of Jews that you're going to be speaking to. And you just don't happen to like your priest, and not, that you don't happen to like that there's a Roman emperor that's kind of in charge here. So I Romans, and the Jews have whatever they have after they're liberated from being occupied or oppressed by the Romans, but I'm not even sure of that.
Yeah, well, that certainly seems to be the common understanding at the time of what the king would do.
Right.
The Messiah, the anointed one, the one who comes to take up David's lineage as king of the Jews, would be to create a sovereign nation. And obviously that is different than what Jesus is going about, because as he says, his kingdom is not of this world. I wonder what that means.
Makes it even more multi-layered. He's not overthrowing the rabbis, he's not overthrowing the emperor. There's yet another layer of, some sort of kingdom involved.
Yeah, so there's different layers. What could you give names to those layers? Give an attempt.
Yeah, well, even for us, it's so you're not in California, you're not in Oakland or San Francisco. I'm not of California, the United States. Are you from? The first thing I can imagine that Pilate would think is like, so are you from some other empire? Or are you that?
Yeah. Are you
Yeah.
an agent of a foreign
Yeah,
empire?
are you an unregistered foreign agent here? Or of course, the other thing that I was raised to think about is like, well, is there some sort of spiritual? Are there angels and demons and other, supernatural, not even just like a different nation state from a different place, but another level of kingdom.
Sure. And that perhaps maps onto different levels, different layers, as you were talking about.
This conversation reminds me of like modern day, like labor conversations, where individuals are trying to organize, and the union is like talking about what an individual needs, and the corporation's like, you can't make that work, right? And they're not looking at like the cost of living in an area, and there's a union rep who has to go like, they don't have health care, they can't pay for bills, and the corporation's like, but if you expound this by, this many employees, we could never have a bottom line, and they all just kind of talk from their own points of view. And it also made me think that like, the corporation or the bar, or Pilate, do they ever think of the individual? And when I think of like out of this world, is it of actually like the individual identity?
Okay, so on perhaps on a single materialist level, perhaps Jesus is, in the perspective of thinking more about individuals' needs and concerns, you're saying?
Yeah.
While Pilate is trying to create, order in the big picture.
It reminds me of a few weeks ago, they were throwing all those questions at Jesus of like, well, who should we pay taxes to? Or like, I forget how it all is, but this is when he says, whose picture is on the coin? You pay to the person whose picture is on the coin. He's again setting up kind of like, there is a difference between the governance that's happening here and what I am here for. It's like a separation of church and state type of thing, right?
Yeah, so that, thank you for bringing that in. So the, Caesar's image on the coin, and that's often been interpreted to understand God's image on us. Those are, two different layers to further that idea of interaction in the same, physical space.
I think his statement, "My kingdom is not of this world," is really, it's a revolutionary statement. And, I think about the current political situation and the wars that we're facing. It's a statement saying there is a different way to order human affairs. And that moves me. I feel like that's part of, you know, why I come to church, to get a little glimpse of that, what it could look like if it's different. To hold a vision that's different.
Yeah.
Kind of wish he'd said
That
more,
moment.
you
Right,
know?
sure.
But it
Just
rests.
give us the blueprint.
But
Right?
it rests on all the things that he taught all the way up
Yeah.
in his ministry up until then, you know. What's the most important commandment? To love God and love your neighbor as yourself. And that's a really radical view.
Sure. Yeah. It's a transformational, radical, different way of organizing ourselves rather than in, you know, kingdoms, nations, power
Hierarchies,
structures,
yeah.
hierarchies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It also kind of throws Pilate totally off track because it's not in the way categories he wants to see. So he's kind of stuck, and that's why, you know, at the end he washes his hands of it, like, I just want out of here.
Yeah, he's very focused on the state as it is. And what do you mean there's a different state here? Like a different kingdom here? Like, what? Yeah, it's just, it doesn't work, it doesn't fit into his way of understanding his job or the world as it is.
How does it end? It says something like, I'm Jesus, I seek truth, and those who also seek truth follow me.
He said, "You say that I'm a king. I was born and came into the world for this one purpose, to speak about the truth. Whoever belongs to the truth listens to me." I wonder what that means. Whoever belongs to the truth listens to me.
Peter.
No.
Maybe whoever's honest.
Okay, so whoever is honest, whoever speaks the truth is listening to Jesus.
I came to this world to what?
This world to speak the truth.
I was born and came into the world for this one purpose, to speak about the truth. Whoever belongs to the truth listens to me.
I've been trying to process the very beginning of the story where nobody answers the question at the beginning. And these Jewish leaders go outside and they don't answer the question. The Romans, they don't answer the question. It's just kind of assumed that we all know what the answer is. And that's just fascinating. There's sort of that double speak that we hear coming from officials all the time. And that ignoring of things, and you know, it's something that we deal with today a lot. And that's like, oh, there it is.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
Isn't the exact next line where the story ends? The next line is where Pilate says, "What is truth?"
I think so, yes.
So there's this whole thing of like we don't know what we're talking about, and even Jesus says, I have one purpose, to tell people the truth. People of the truth listen to me, which itself is a tautology. So I'm here to talk about this thing, and people that are of that will listen to me. Like, who's that? What are you talking about? But there's clearly some sort of popular movement here. It is a populist like movement. It seems like, right? There's something that he represents for those people that neither Pilate nor the Jewish officials seem to speak to or resonate with.
Can you explain a tautology?
A tautology is something that's kind of defined by itself. He didn't actually add anything to the definition. He said, people of the truth listen to the truth. They talk about the truth. And literally, the line that comes next in Pilate is, "What's the truth?" and there's these clearly frustrated by that.
Sure.
Which just for me means that I like so what did Jesus say again? And I have to go back and read the gospel
Yeah.
again and say, like, what are all these things you're saying? Because clearly people are listening.
Yeah, so you're saying, in some ways, that Jesus is saying, I'm speaking the truth because what I'm saying is the truth.
Yeah. Yeah.
And therefore you should listen to me,
Yeah.
right? And that is if you have skepticism already, then that doesn't necessarily help
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, nobody is answering Pilate's questions. It's just like, they assume that he knows the answer.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh, we don't need to tell you. You already know. No, I don't.
Yeah. He's in a difficult position. Sure. I wonder why this reading might be important to reflect on at this time every year, the end of the calendar of readings before we begin Advent and a new church year.
Maybe by the end of the year, we should know what the truth is.
I'm really glad you asked that question because that was my first thing when this reading came up today and you brought it up this way. I thought, oh, here we are, we're just about to be in Advent. Why are we listening to this story now?
Yeah.
So I don't know the answer. Please enlighten me.
So we have some confusion and wondering, maybe because by now we should know the truth.
Or for the, we're preparing for his birth, so like we should know what we're waiting for by now.
Right, I mean, I think what you're glibly saying is also, reflective of what we've been discussing, which is this rests on everything that Jesus has said already so far. And in that way, perhaps, Jesus doesn't need to, make this long, complex argument because it is resting on what has come before. And by now, at the end of the year, we should get it, right?
This is literally the end of the liturgical calendar. It's intensely frustrating if that is in fact like where it ends, is that he says, I come for this one purpose, people, that speak of the truth, and people of the truth will listen to me. But I guess the nice thing about liturgical calendars is that they're a 2-year cycle, and they continue and start over again. So, like, as I heard myself saying, I guess I have to go back and read what he said. And so now when you start the year, and you hear it again. And then you go back and figure out, well, you close with, I was the one purpose, and my question is, what did I miss? Here we go again, to the next liturgical year.
Yeah, there's a very common Christian understanding that Jesus was born in order to die. I wonder what this says about that. That Jesus himself says, I was born and came into the world for this one purpose, to speak the truth.
I do think it is interesting to read this line right before we celebrate the birth of Christ. Like, to have this in mind as we go into thinking about the Christmas story in general. I don't know what it means, but it will give me a new lens through which to view the birth of Christ. You asked specifically about, like, what does it mean for Jesus to be born to die? Was that your question?
There is a common Christian understanding, one that I don't necessarily
Okay.
adhere to, that Jesus came to be a sacrifice for our sins. And that, the crucifixion and resurrection is basically all that matters. And here, he's actually saying, I was born and came to this world to speak about the truth.
I like that idea.
You like that idea better, okay.
And it's also striking that he's not claiming kingship, he's just claiming a voice of the truth. Yeah, and what was funny, a few days ago, somehow in a conversation over dinner or something, family had, so I brought up Pontius Pilate. And I was like, well, it's inappropriate because, Pontius Pilate was before Easter.
happening here.
Yeah.
And now, was this meeting was presumably shortly before he was tried and executed?
Mhm.
But, okay. So, but anyway, it's kind of serendipitous.
Funny timing, yes. I wonder where the good news is for you in today's story.
Right, the bits about truth.
Truth.
Yeah. I mean,
I just want to say I really appreciated Francie's comment about truth, about what she had to say about truth. And it just reminded me of, it's a very simple childhood story, but when I was a kid, my mother, whose father was, had an interior decorating and painting business, she had had a lovely paintbrush from him that she used as a dustpan brush, and she loved it because the very fine hairs swept up the dust. Anyway, I was building a clubhouse in the basement, and I saw this paintbrush. I said, oh, this is great. I'm going to use it to paint my clubhouse. And I thought, I know about turpentine. I'll just rinse it out in turpentine, put it back in the closet. It didn't work so well. And the paint, I stuck it in the turpentine. I painted the clubhouse, stuck it in the turpentine, and the paint wasn't coming off. And I thought, well, maybe if I leave it to soak there. Meanwhile, my mother's going, he's going, what happened to that paintbrush? I can't find it anywhere. And you know, it's a really nice paintbrush that my father gave me. I just really like this, and I'm just sitting there, literally for months.
mm,
And one day, I finally told her what happened. And the burden that lifted from me, that was huge. And you know, telling the truth sets you free.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. There is a levity to the truth.
Mhm.
It makes it easier
Mhm.
to live in truth.
You have a book called The Honest to Goodness Truth. And it talks, there's a little girl in the book who tells a lie to her mom. And then a few pages later, she tells the truth to her mom and then reflects to herself how light and free she felt.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah, so truth can make us feel light and free. Well, thank you all for wondering along with me about today's story. Starting to clean up here. And then we will head over to the font, gather rocks and water for our prayers.